Hello and welcome to season 4 of the Technology, Risk and Gambling webinar series brought to you by the University of Sydney's Brain and Mind Centre and Technology Addiction Team. I'm Sally Gainsbury. I'm Professor in the School of Psychology at the University of Sydney and Director of the Gambling Treatment and Research Clinic. And I'm very pleased to be here with my co-host, Assistant Professor Kahlil Philander, who's going to introduce our guest for today.
Well, thank you very much, Sally. So this week we have with us Fred Steinmetz from the Blockchain Research Lab. And the topic of our conversation for today relates to his 2023 paper in Computers and Human Behavior on the interrelations between cryptocurrency and gambling. So this is obviously a topic that we've talked a little bit about with Fred's colleague, Ingo Fiedler, previously. I think maybe 2 or 3 seasons back now on our seminar series, as well as a couple other people. But we're going to be looking at this from, I think, a very different angle. So, Fred, thank you very much for joining us on the webinar series today.
Thanks a lot for inviting me and for your interest in my research.
So I thought an interesting place to start today might be not to dive into the paper immediately, but actually to get a little bit more background on you as well as the Blockchain Research Lab. So I'm wondering initially how you came to study this topic and then how you ended up at this relatively new institution.
My background is basically business administration. I did a bachelor and a master, and my master thesis was about blockchain technology and its potential applications in the banking system. And this has been one of my first touch points with cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. And recently, after I started working at the university with Ingo Fiedler, and we did a lot of gambling research. And in parallel, we did a lot of cryptocurrency and blockchain research because it was so, it was novel and like a new technology, a fascinating industry, lots of innovation. And so I was kind of fascinated by the topic and by the idea to research it because it was so novel. There was no research on it. So this went on then studying both cryptocurrency on the one side and blockchain and gambling on the other side, but more like in parallel. And then when cryptocurrency began growing, like in societal relevance, I started to realize these topics could interrelate in different ways, and there's literally no research other than Sally's and Alex Blashinsky's paper from 2017, and there's lots of opportunity to do research on it, and we assumed that the topic would get bigger, and this is kind of how my background is, researching both topics in parallel and then coming to the conclusion that there are certain interrelations that need to be investigated. And by the time we were also doing blockchain projects, research projects at the university, and finally ultimately this led us to found a separate non-profit research company, which gives us certain degrees of freedom in terms of our research, but also gathering funding and working more interdisciplinary on the topic. And this is kind of how the Blockchain Research Lab was founded then. It was back in April 2018, so we're here for 5 years already. The topic of the intersections between cryptocurrency and gambling have been pursued and investigated by us
That's
context.
really a great background. I was wondering, a lot of people who are listening today won't necessarily be or will be familiar with the terms blockchain and cryptocurrency, but might not have an in-depth understanding of them. Can you quickly take us through a quick definition of blockchain and cryptocurrency, and particularly the difference between them?
Oh, yeah, sure. Um, when talking about cryptocurrency, we basically talk about a particular type of a digital asset. So it doesn't exist physically, but only digitally. And what is special about, or what differentiates cryptocurrency as a digital asset from other digital assets is basically that it's underpinned by a particular technology that is commonly referred to as blockchain technology. And it's basically a technical infrastructure that is decentralized in the sense that the database that keeps track of transactions of this particular digital asset is managed by a network of participants, clients, nodes that validate and verify the transactions that occur in this network. And they use certain mechanisms, which are referred to as consensus mechanisms, to agree if transactions are valid. And the term blockchain basically originates in the fact that new transactions are kind of batched into blocks and then added to the current state, which consists of all the transactions that ever happened. And forming this block and connecting it to the existing state of the network extends the chain, so to say. So this mechanism of finding consensus continues, and it always continues. And it's underpinned by economic incentive schemes that ensure that people, these clients and nodes that perform these tasks are economically incentivized to do so.
Thank you for giving us that background. And so if I if I can try to repeat that back in a way that sort of extends our interest from a gambling perspective, one of the things that exists now that you have this technology is that different applications or different assets can be built up, on top of the blockchain. And
Correct.
I think that takes us back to some of the work by Oliver Schulten, who first looked at actual small gambling games that were running on top of a blockchain. Is that right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So my explanation, I agree, it was kind of technical. So you have that technical infrastructure, that network that these digital assets live on. And these technical infrastructures kind of improved so that random people and developers, everybody is able to submit code onto it, which lives on the blockchain and can be executed by everybody. So it's out of control of the developer once he submitted it. And this way, applications like constructs of code then form applications, different types of applications that exist on the blockchain. And several of these applications, so these applications can also replicate gambling logic. So they're basically gambling applications that are deployed on a decentralized, hard to censor infrastructure.
When I was first looking at this, one of the interesting aspects of blockchain gambling was that it was decentralized, and once it was deployed, it couldn't be altered. So to me, that really eliminates any concern around corruption or fixing the game or cheating in any way. And potentially, for regulators, I would have thought this would be really exciting. However, it obviously has, I was looking at it in 2017 and obviously existed before then. It's now 2023. That this hasn't been broadly adopted. Can you take us through maybe how it has changed over time and what you see as the current state and potentially future at the moment?
Yeah, well, I kind of shared your view by the time. I thought, um, so maybe for background, if you have a gambling logic transparently on this decentralized infrastructure, as a user, if you're able to read code, you can basically verify what is happening. You see exactly when you send cryptocurrency as a stake to a particular application, which mechanisms are then triggered. And if you win, you get something back, and if you lose, it's not there. And these algorithm applied in these applications, they kind of, to a certain extent, they're verifiable. So the claim that these applications made was basically it's like fair, provably fair gambling, not taking into account that there was any measure of protection for users of any kind. But it's the mechanism of randomness is provably fair. That was the claim. And also using this infrastructure from the perspective of gambling operators, there are many advantages to this, like disintermediating or making payment providers, which are very costly, superfluous, by allowing users to directly interact with you on the financial level. So I thought this is kind of revolutionary, and there was kind of adoption picking up, but until today, it's still not the case. So when I give seminars, for example, for people who are on the helpline for people seeking help with gambling problems, I search for examples on chain to show people how interacting with decentralized gambling applications actually works. And it got harder and harder to find applications that I could showcase. So regarding decentralized gambling, not too much innovation and adoption has taken place since then. That's my opinion. What has found resonance among users was not putting the whole application with the gambling logic on chain, but providing gambling venues where you can basically use your cryptocurrency as a stake. So you use cryptocurrency to deposit onto a platform, and then the rest of the gambling happens basically within the provider systems. And when you want to withdraw, you get back cryptocurrency. This has kind of attracted lots of attention, and there's one particular provider that went really, really successful. Also using a really high marketing budget, but that kind of resonated. So what do we learn from that? It's basically the gamblers themselves are not too much interested in the technical side. Rather, it is interesting for them to gamble at a venue where they can use their cryptocurrency just as a stake.
And so that's, I think what you're describing is it's just basically a form of regulatory arbitrage where operators who are, say, online operators don't necessarily have a gaming license, but it's hard to use the traditional enforcement mechanisms like constraining their access to the financial system or other payment processors when they use these types of tools for payment processing. Is that right?
Well, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it reminds me of the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act in the United States, which they were not able to necessarily block individuals from accessing these sites, but what they did was effectively control financial networks, and that inhibited Americans from being able to play online.
Well, yes. So I would add to that the success of this particular casino, online casino, was basically came together with the whole hype about around cryptocurrency, and they were using very famous people to advertise their services, and this kind of created a pull effect, and this also played a major role in the success of this particular provider, I guess.
Well, and this can, I think, bring us to the topic of your paper, which actually focused on something a little bit different. You weren't focusing on people using cryptocurrency or blockchains to gamble on chain. You were actually looking at people who gambled and comparing them to people who just bought and traded cryptocurrencies. Is that right?
Yeah, right. So we got hands on a really, really interesting data set back in 2019, which was one of the first of its kind, and in Germany, because it was examining cryptocurrency users and use among the German internet population, and it was a representative sample, which was really, really interesting. And so the focus of the data set was basically gathering data about cryptocurrency use, because it was such a novel phenomenon that no data was available about that. And we, as also gambling researchers, took the chance and designed the survey, so gambling questions are also in there, and then I had the chance to do that paper, and basically it's about investigating whether the participation in gambling affects the involvement in cryptocurrency, and the research that was available by the time that I started writing this paper was basically investigating if cryptocurrency, especially cryptocurrency trading and the frequency of trading, affects gambling participation in gambling habits. Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to contribute to the current state of the literature by the time, and extend investigations not only focusing on cryptocurrency trading as an activity, but more recognizing the versatility of cryptocurrency. So you can use cryptocurrency for other purposes than speculation. And I wanted to account for that. And so I basically developed a construct for involvement that has three aspects that are the mental involvement, financial involvement, and active involvement. I was using cluster analysis then to search for behavioral patterns within those users that reported to have gambled within the last 12 months, and also currently own cryptocurrency.
Sally, I'm curious, were any of these issues something that you had in mind when you were first looking at cryptocurrency back in, I guess, was it 2017? Were you thinking about trading as a fundamental part of the financial risk taking?
Well, I have to admit, back in 2017, this was one of the hardest papers I've ever written because I'm not a, data scientist or technical analyst or engineer, so I really wanted to make sure I got this right. So we did a lot of deep dive. It took a long time to write the review of the field, but it was fascinating. I agree with Fred that for me, the opportunities seemed huge. And after writing this paper, I was saying, just wait, it's going to be blockchain. Everything's going to be on the blockchain for the future going forward. There's so many applications, and I still stand by that. It overcomes a lot of issues. It's verifiable. It eliminates a lot of the need for regulation and constant checks because you can easily access all the information. So I was looking at casinos, as Fred said, there were gambling games that were built on the blockchain. So for example, if you're playing a game of poker, you make a contract, and if you lose, the money automatically transfers. You can't then say, nah, I decided not to pay you. So it really eliminates a lot of transactional needs, and it makes it fairer for everybody. But the flip side was, particularly back in 2017 and possibly still now, was this idea of the extent to which you know who you're playing, and know your customer essentially disappears because you don't know your customer at all. And that was always been and remains one of the big issues. Is I don't believe, and Fred, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that blockchain or cryptocurrency is anonymous. I think there are ways to track back, because at some point an individual has purchased the cryptocurrency. So there are ways to track back. So that idea that cryptocurrency is completely anonymous, I think is a myth, but it certainly does hide anonymity, and it gets away from that idea of having to verify your account. And so from a problem gambling, an anti-money laundering issue, there are certainly limitations around the use of blockchain and cryptocurrency. But I haven't seen regulators pursue this, except, which is surprising to me, moving to ban it and to not use it. So in Australia, there's currently legislation being pending to prohibit the use of cryptocurrency for any gambling. So I was wondering, Fred, if you could talk us through how the reaction has been amongst different jurisdictions, to the extent to which in terms of seeing this as a positive step forward or pretend like something to be banning.
Well, first of all, I'm not aware. I was not aware that Australia aims to ban the use of cryptocurrency for gambling in particular. It's kind of hard to imagine how that could be enforced. I mean, yeah. So will be interesting to see.
Yes, their intent is to ban it amongst regulated websites. So to have a license, you won't be allowed to, accept cryptocurrency. But they obviously, you're right. They can't ban it, people from using it.
Okay, I understand. So that would eliminate part of the traffic, I guess. Yeah, quickly referring to your first statement. Yes, cryptocurrencies is not really anonymous. People refer to it as pseudo-anonymous because there are ways of connecting identities with cryptocurrency wallets and activity, like you said. And then referring to your last question, I have to admit I'm not too much into the regulatory aspects because it was not really relevant. Even now it's not really relevant. So in Germany, we have like this federal system, and then there's a gambling treaty that covers all the 16 federal states. And it took a really long time to negotiate. So as far as I am aware, there's no mention of cryptocurrency in this treaty at all. So regulation where I live, it's my impression, is kind of lagging behind on that topic. And this has, I assume it's the case with lots of regulation. That has different reasons. Cryptocurrency was a niche phenomenon until, I don't know, 2 years, or 3 years, or 4 years ago, depending on the definition. What is a niche? But it's gaining in traction now, and before that, it was not too relevant in certain jurisdictions. So it's kind of understandable that it was not high priority for regulators. But as it is now gaining traction, and I'm scanning the landscape of new publications on the intersection of gambling and cryptocurrency, and there's more and more research coming. So there's more awareness, and it grows linearly with the adoption rate of cryptocurrency among societies. So it will be a topic one day. My prediction.
Yeah, so I guess tying that back to your paper, which I think you mentioned was, if I recall correctly, reading it, it was 2019 is when the data was collected.
Right.
And I think that, so that would, and you mentioned this, I think it predates DeFi, it predates NFTs, and sort of the wider spread adoption of cryptocurrencies. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind talking us through the sort of 3 different, I think, interesting groups that you found in your data and how you think those might have evolved over time. And so on that, I'm talking about the group of people who were gamblers only, the group who were crypto asset owners only, and then the group which did both. So
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the main focus of your study. I was wondering what you think that might look like today versus what it looked like in 2019.
Basically, the descriptive statistics that I presented were kind of novel at the time, right? The data allowed me to distinguish between non-users, those who don't gamble and don't use cryptocurrency, and then gamblers that only gamble or they reported to gamble within the last 12 months prior to the survey, and then pure crypto users which have not been which did not report to have gambled, and then crypto gamblers. And basically, the most interesting comparison was comparing crypto users to crypto gamblers. That is because the focus of the survey was on gathering data on cryptocurrency use. So most of the variables that were available for investigations were focused on cryptocurrency use and crypto and psychological characteristics. Like we ask respondents to which extent they trust the integrity of cryptocurrency, like on a scale from 1 to 10. And also, to which extent is the purchase of cryptocurrency ideologically motivated? And referring to these 2 variables in particular now, I found basically that that the trust in cryptocurrency and the level to which a user is motivated when buying or holding cryptocurrency is at an elevated level for crypto gamblers. And further, knowledge levels, it's self-reported knowledge from cryptocurrency users compared to comparing the 2 groups. Knowledge levels about cryptocurrency and about blockchain technology were also elevated. And crypto gamblers were also using more, were holding more cryptocurrency. They were investing more, and interestingly, they also had a higher portfolio value on average. this kind of indicates that that there's some relation between cryptocurrency and gambling. So I need to dig deeper. Like I said in the beginning, I wanted to dig for if I can find patterns of involvement, and cluster analysis was perfect for this. I needed to model this the involvement, and I took the variables, the mental variables are basically ideology, yeah, sorry, and trust perceptions. And then the active part of involvement I defined as the frequency of speculation and the number of coins that one owns. And then the financial aspect is the investment. The investment variable basically describes how much money a respondent invested in cryptocurrency in total without taking profits and reinvesting. So initial investment amounts, something like that. And taking these variables into the cluster analysis, I was able to find three particular groups that are significantly different, and those are basically, so roughly said, it's not too exciting. You have a cluster that is low on every dimension of involvement, on every aspect that is mental, active, and financial. And then you have a cluster that is more like average with kind of over average ideology, but all the other variables are kind of average. And then we find I find a group that is highly involved. And this in particular, this particular group is then the most interesting. So the analysis in very roughly shows that the intersection of cryptocurrency and cryptocurrency involvement in gambling is not so it needs to be regarded with nuances. Not every cryptocurrency user is a gambler. So we have a particular group of people who use cryptocurrency and gambling that show particularly elevated involvement extents. Yeah.
That's really consistent with what I was going to comment, that we don't see clinically a lot of people who gamble with cryptocurrency. So when we have our clients, it's unusual for people to come with problems and to be using cryptocurrency. But clinically, it does make sense that people who gamble in an elevated fashion would use cryptocurrency, because there is that nature of speculation and risk taking that goes along with purchasing and being involved in cryptocurrency, that is related to similar attitudes or personality characteristics that would lead someone to engage in gambling as well. So there is this risk-taking nature embedded in both activities. So I'm not surprised to find there to be an overlap. And I imagine your research didn't look into problematic gambling, but I'll just to quickly call out, if anyone is watching this, to put in the chat. It would be really interesting if anyone's watching to put in the chat your experience with or any knowledge around crypto and blockchain gambling amongst populations of people who do experience gambling harm, because we want to use the brain's trust of all the people watching our webinar. But that's, I think, something that is of concern, that this is something that, people who have gambling problems typically tend to source funds and use as many different payment mechanisms as possible. And so there is this sort of relation between people who are more involved in gambling. But as you say, and it's involved, it doesn't necessarily mean these people are problematic gambling or experiencing harm, but there is that nature of risk taking that goes along with it. So that's potentially sort of another avenue of research but as I think it's too niche at the moment to really be able to do that research well, because I expect it to be quite small. Could you actually talk us through, are you aware of the prevalence of this, or how popular is it? How common, whether in the jurisdictions you're aware of, that people are gambling using cryptocurrency?
Unfortunately, I cannot tell. So that's a question I would love to answer. But I cannot. The data is not there. So there are opportunities for using on-chain data to assess the popularity of particular on blockchain gambling venues, but it's impossible to associate particular users and their wallets to a jurisdiction. And as far as I know, there's no data for any jurisdiction which particularly shows that. So my paper is based on 2019 data, and basically what we found in 2019 were 9% of current cryptocurrency users, so 9% of the respondents currently own cryptocurrency, and another 9% reported to have owned cryptocurrency in the past. These numbers for 2019 were kind of high, but that has several reasons. For example, using an online panel for sourcing data is basically, people who participate in online panels are on average more technologically savvy than which makes it hard to create a representativity, right? But basically, from the 9% of current cryptocurrency users that we surveyed, 52% of them reported to have gambled within the last 12 months prior to the survey. And that's quite a lot. But one has to say that it would be very, very interesting to gather data and replicate the data set for today, in today's times, and also differentiating different forms of gambling. Because if someone reports to have gambled within the last 12 months prior to the survey, it can also be a one-time participation in a lottery. And it would be more interesting to gather data differentiating different types of gambling, for example, sports betting, gambling in relation to esports, like skin betting with skins and something like that. So this would really enrich the insights we could gather on the behavioral intersections.
Now, I found it really interesting that part of the measures that you found that high.
Excuse me, I lost your connection.
Oh. Still there? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought was interesting was that the high involvement group had also high reported self-reported understanding, which to me sounds like it might be something very different than actual understanding, and might be a measure of cognitive distortions, which we see in high frequency users, rather than people truly understanding the nature of the products they're using. Does that explanation gel with sort of your intuitive understanding of who these people are?
So the paper doesn't give evidence on that, but it indicates it could be the case, yeah, and it's logical. So I wrote another paper on cryptocurrency users, and it's the same there. users who own cryptocurrency think, of course, they know a lot and they trust a lot in the technology. They report a high trust, because if they would do otherwise, they would kind of diminishing their the reasoning behind their decision to buy that. So yeah, it's exactly like you said. This is what I'm assuming. Yeah, but more research needs to be conducted on that.
And that's something I wanted to pick up on. A lot of people who are watching today are either researchers or work in the community or potentially work in industry and regulation. Have you had any correspondence when you present at international conferences? Are there other people working in this space? Is there any, I guess I'm trying to think of what are the next steps for people to try and understand or potentially further their knowledge or conduct research in this area?
Well, I have to admit this, particularly the research that covers the intersections between cryptocurrency and gambling, it is still kind of limited. So not many researchers focus particularly only on that niche. Um, um, my However, I can see that more research is being published on the topic, especially in the last 1.5 years. I'm currently scanning that for a systematics literature review with my colleagues, so there's something to expect from there. And I would suggest researchers interested in the topic to read that paper and follow the future research recommendations that we that we conclude from reviewing the existing literature and um, 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 and also the future research recommendations that the particular research publications point out. And then I think it's very important to be aware of that this niche is particular. It's kind of versatile. It's multifaceted. So there's an intersection that basically describes gambling with cryptocurrency. So using cryptocurrency as a stake, one thing. Then there's another cluster that basically is about the similarities between cryptocurrency trading and gambling. So there's a lot of research about similarities between stock trading, high risk stock trading, and gambling. And now with cryptocurrency, it's a kind of a new asset class. It introduces greater levels of volatility, for example. And there are different asset classes with different ways to trade them and different, like for example, NFTs. And then there's a third cluster, which basically addresses the convergence of gaming, gambling, and investing and speculative investment. And cryptocurrency is also part of that. So there's another intersection. I think researchers interested in the topic should get aware where they can best fit their qualities and the data available, and to contribute to this emerging research stream. Yeah.
Now, on the topic of the proximity of cryptocurrencies and trading, and how those two products might look very similar in terms of financial risk taking, there's one product that seems to be unique to crypto that we don't see in traditional financial markets, and that's the perpetual future. And that's a product which I see as something that has become incredibly popular as a tool to predominantly gamble on in some way, shape, or form. Now, when we think about derivative type products in traditional financial markets. Yes, it's used for speculation, but it's also used for a lot of different specific purposes like hedging and other things that might have legitimate uses. Whereas the perpetual futures, which are called perps, seem to me to be exclusively a tool for enhancing volatility and risk taking in some way, shape, or form. Is that the way that you see the product, or would you mind? And it's a very hard thing to describe and provide a definition of, but can you try to give a definition of what a perpetual future is and how you see it as used as a product by consumers?
Kahlil, sorry, I wanted to ask you if you could give a definition of a perpetual future.
I don't think I can. It's very hard. So a perpetual future is something that was built on the original idea of a future. Now, the original idea of a future was that two people might agree to make a transaction at some point in the future for a specific price. So that started with, say, for example, a farmer who might want to sell some wheat in the future, and they might want to lock in a price of, I don't know how wheat is sold, $10 a bushel. I don't even know if that's even close to how much a bushel of wheat costs. And they might engage with somebody in an agreement, which is called a futures contract, that no matter what the price is in the future, that they're going to sell that wheat for $10. And so the price may be above that, or it might be below that, and depending on how the price changed, one person's going to be worse off in the future, and one person's going to be better off in the future. So that's a normal future, which has a single point in time when the contract gets settled. A perpetual future is, like the name implies, something where there isn't a single point in the future where the contract gets settled, but it actually gets settled something like every 8 hours or 12 hours or 24 hours in the future. And the way that works is that there's some sort of reference price, which might be, say, for example, the average of whatever Bitcoin trades on the three biggest exchanges at, and whatever the futures market is showing as the reference price of where people are trading back and forth on this product. And so the way it works is every 8 hours, based on the difference between those two things, people might pay the person who's speculating that's going to be lower than the price, they might pay interest to the person who speculated it's going to be higher than the price, just based on where this futures product is changing or trading in reference to that actual reference price of what the spot market in these top three exchanges are. Now, the reason why this is a tool for speculation, as I understand it, is because you're only settling a small percentage of what the difference in price is, you can actually create large amounts of leverage off a small amount of money. And so if a day in the future or 8 hours in the future, if the price is off by 1%, then you could trade 10 times the expected movement in Bitcoin, and you would only owe sort of a fraction of what it would cost to buy that many Bitcoins in the spot market. So with a small amount of money, you can get a large amount of leverage on the sort of day-to-day movement of a cryptocurrency. Is that anywhere close to your understanding of the perp market?
So, I couldn't have done it better. So perfect. So, yeah, well, I have to admit, I'm not an expert on perpetual futures. So you're right in identifying that derivatives in general have a high prevalence and a meaning for cryptocurrency, for the whole industry, or for cryptocurrency trading. People who get into crypto, let's put it like this, and enter the like one of the major information exchange platforms like Twitter, they get exposed to lots of people showing off their trading results, most of the time using leverage. So it's very, very popular, and it's kind of something normal. but that's just an assumption. There's no data that I have derived this statement from. The market is, how do I put it? Centralized and even decentralized exchanges have the interest in generating fee income, and they also generate income from the activity of liquidating leveraged positions, because there are processes behind that they can charge users for. And animating users to use new products, these types of products that generate fees, is something very normal. So these exchanges basically have not faced any restrictions in what kind of strange financial/gambling products they were producing, inventing, and actively advertising. This kind of relates to this gamification, gamblification thing, that new financial instruments were experimented and developed to get people to be more active, speculate more, try that, try this, do a one-on-one battle. It kind of got to the extent where it was kind of ridiculous. But as the industry grew in relevance, major exchanges also stopped providing access to everybody. So geo-blocking was activated, and for example, I was not able to showcase and experiment with many of these strange products.
Well, I think that's, first of all, I'm very grateful for that introduction, that explanation, not having to be given by myself, and that Kahlil, you waited till quite close to the end before we got completely technical and hopefully didn't lose half our audience. So thank you both for taking us on the journey. Fred, I want to really thank you for your time today, your excellent paper, which we'll make available in the show notes under the YouTube. I do encourage anyone watching to put comments on and share their experience. This is really something we're all trying to learn as much as possible. So if anyone has anything to share, please add that in the comments for us all to learn from. And particularly Fred, speaking as a non-native English speaker, it's been just a pleasure and a very expert webinar for you. I apologize for any bird noises. It's quite early here in Australia. I think everyone can imagine the fun challenges of logistically organizing live calls between Australia, the US, and Europe. So thank you everyone for watching. I want to make everyone aware of a really exciting episode of the TRG coming up. On November 9th, we are having another early career research showcase where we are inviting any recently graduated early career researchers or current high degree PhD students to send us some abstract and give a very brief presentation. So we will have around the world by student presentations on November 9th. If you are a supervisor or a student or an early career researcher, please send me or Kahlil an email and we'll give you some more information about that. Next week, we are having Andrew Orbach, who is a gaming analyst at Taylor Colson from Australia. We've got a fairly ambiguous title of Trends and Innovations because we are going to go into all the different details of what is happening in technology that's impacting the gambling markets, not just in Australia, but internationally, particularly in Australia and the US. So please join us. But a huge thank you to Kahlil for our co-host, Dr. Kahlil Philander at Washington State University. And of course, Fred, thank you so much for your expert sharing. And we look forward to speaking to everyone and hearing from you soon. Please do get in touch with any future ideas for topics or speakers. And feel free to share this episode with anyone who might be interested. Thank you.